Welcome to Lifespan, the weekly podcast that digs up the dirt on the most outrageous,
Idiotic.
and downright WTF lives ever lived.
Absolutely.
Forget what you learned in school. This is history's unhinged side, all told in a fun and fascinating way.
Share, rate, and follow the show for more wild stories.
Okay, so today you asked us to take a bizarre journey into the 17th century,
Ooh.
to the utterly unconventional existence of Julie d'Aubigné.
Better known as Maupin,
Now you're looking to get the lowdown quickly.
but thoroughly,
Yeah, see things from different angles and have those aha moments
without feeling buried.
buried under information. Exactly.
Yeah, buckle up.
Buckle up, because Maupin's life story,
Oh, yeah.
drawn from various historical testimonies and juicy anecdotes, is a wild ride, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Our mission, to unpack the most fascinating
And frankly,
shocking parts of her life.
the true rebel.
A true rebel who laughed in the face of every rule
Every rule.
society tried to impose.
So to really grasp the sheer audacity of Maupin, you have to picture 17th century France.
Yeah,
It wasn't exactly a playground for personal expression,
right,
especially if you were born a woman.
right.
Society was structured like a very rigid pyramid,
Uh-huh.
where women's legal and social identities were often tied to their fathers or husbands,
Yeah.
limiting their autonomy in ways almost unimaginable today.
Hold it.
Maupin's defiance wasn't just a personal rebellion.
Yeah.
It was a direct assault on this entire structure.
Mm.
So when someone like Julie d'Aubigné comes along
Right.
and throws all that out the window,
Yeah.
it's like a shockwave
A shockwave.
in a very still world.
Exactly. And Julie d'Aubigny, born around 1670 or 1673.
That's in the exact year.
Even the exact year is a bit of a mystery,
Right.
which kind of adds to her legendary aura, doesn't it?
It really does.
She wasn't about that still world life.
Yeah.
She was a force of nature who just steamrolled right over those conventions.
Absolutely.
Now let's look at how this rebel was forged. Her father, Gaston d'Aubigny,
Gaston.
was secretary to the Count of Armagnac,
Who was...
who was basically the king's head stable guy.
Right.
A very influential position
Powerful position.
that gave him direct access to and favor with Louis XIV.
The Sun King himself.
This gave her a connection to the royal court.
Mm-hmm.
A privileged start, for sure.
What's fascinating here is the kind of influence her father seems to have been.
Yeah.
He wasn't your typical stuffy court official.
Right.
He was a master swordsman,
Yeah.
enjoyed a bit of gambling, a drink or two,
Oh, yeah.
and was no stranger to the Parisian nightlife.
Yeah.
Now, that's a pretty unconventional upbringing for a girl in that era.
Yeah.
And the fact that her mother's identity is largely a mystery
Right.
without a strong maternal figure
Yeah.
in the traditional sense,
Right.
that could certainly have played a role in
Yeah.
her untraditional path.
Right. No traditional role model at home.
Exactly.
Instead, Julie gets this almost masculine upbringing. Unusually for a girl, she was educated in academic subjects
Mm-hmm.
alongside boys who were destined for court.
Right.
And get this, she excelled at fencing from around the age of 12.
Wow.
Not only that,
Okay.
she insisted on competing against men
Uh-huh.
and often won.
Can you imagine the scandal?
Yeah, can you imagine the scandal?
Yeah.
Beyond the spectacle, it really highlights her early defiance of what was considered appropriate.
Appropriate for women.
Yeah.
It really does. And it wasn't just the fencing.
Right.
She apparently started wearing male clothing at a young age,
Uh-huh.
which was another significant break from societal norms.
Yeah, big time.
Then you have her first scandalous relationship,
Oh.
becoming the mistress of Count d'Armagnac,
Her father's boss.
her father's boss at just 14 or 15.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a pretty dramatic entry into adulthood.
It is.
It makes you wonder about the power dynamics at play,
Yeah.
how much agency she truly had, even
Yeah.
in her rebellion.
Absolutely. And then there's the brief marriage to Sir de Maupin around 1687.
Okay.
It seems like it was more of a formality,
Right.
maybe arranged by d'Armagnac,
Maybe.
because Maupin was quickly sent off,
Uh-huh.
and Julie continued her life,
Mm-hmm.
but that gave her the famous last name.
Right.
And then things get even more adventurous when she gets involved with her fencing master, Suran.
Oh, boy.
When he kills a guy in an illegal duel,
Oh.
they go on the run from Paris.
They're on the lam.
This is where her scandalous public life really kicks off.
This period on the run with Suran is really where we see her start to leverage her unconventional skills.
Okay.
They used her fencing abilities for public entertainment,
Okay.
traveling around the French countryside,
Yeah.
giving demonstrations.
Yeah.
And of course, she's often wearing male attire for these performances,
Right.
openly challenging and defeating men.
Wow.
That anecdote about silencing a heckler by removing her blouse.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of audacious act that really cements her legendary status.
It makes you wonder how much of these stories were carefully crafted
Right.
to build that very legend.
Yeah. That is a good question. It's incredible.
It is.
From these rough and tumble beginnings,
Yeah.
she somehow ends up on the opera stage.
The opera stage?
Apparently, her natural charisma and vocal talent led to roles at the Opéra de Marseille.
Okay.
This is likely when she fully adopted the stage name La Maupin.
The Maupin.
Her relationship with Saran eventually ended, and she then gets involved with a young woman.
Okay.
Her first documented same-sex relationship.
Significant.
This was a significant step,
What?
even in a world accustomed to her breaking boundaries.
And then, with the help of Count d'Armagnac and her new love interest,
Yeah.
the singer Gabriel Vincent Thévenard,
Okay.
she manages to return to Paris
Wow.
and even secures a pardon for her previous escapades.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing the connection she had
Yeah.
and how she navigated these tricky social waters.
Right. Thévenard, being involved with the prestigious Paris Opera, actually insisted that La Maupin get an audition.
He did.
And despite her scandalous reputation preceding her,
Of course.
her talent shone through.
Oh, yeah.
She debuted in December 1690
Okay.
as Pallas in Lully's Cadmus et Hermione.
Cadmus et Hermione.
Jean-Baptiste Lully was the dominant figure in French opera at the time,
Right.
essentially creating the genre as it was known in France.
Right.
Her debut was a sensation.
A sensation.
Partly because of her notoriety,
Right.
but also because she was genuinely talented.
So talented.
Her career at the Paris Opera was significant.
It was.
She wasn't just a flash in the pan.
Right.
She sang in numerous revivals and new productions, working with major composers.
Oh, wow.
What's fascinating here is how she really pioneered the contralto vocal range in opera.
Right.
It's a lower female vocal range.
Yeah.
And at the time, opera heavily favored higher voices.
Sopranos.
So this was a significant departure.
Hmm.
Many roles were specifically written for her lower voice. This challenged the dominance of sopranos for leading female roles,
Yeah.
which was a big shift in the operatic landscape.
Huge.
Absolutely. And her stage presence was just as assertive as her voice.
Oh, yeah.
She excelled at portraying goddesses and warrior women roles that probably felt very natural to her.
Yeah.
Contemporary accounts rave about her performances,
Wow.
some even calling her voice the most beautiful in the world.
The most beautiful in the world.
A real high point was her role as Clorinde
Clorinde.
in André Compra's Tancred in 1702,
Tancred in 1702.
which is seen as the first French opera
Uh-huh.
with a leading contralto role specifically for her.
Okay.
Her final role was in 1705.
1705.
It really solidified her place in operatic history.
And it wasn't just on stage that she was dramatic.
Right.
Her offstage life seemed to mirror the opera.
Yeah.
She was known for being passionate and volatile.
Volatile.
There are these incredible anecdotes,
Uh-huh.
like her threatening suicide during a performance,
Oh.
and even biting a co-star on stage until he bled.
She bit him.
Yeah, it really paints a picture of a larger-than-life personality.
It does.
It makes you wonder how much of this was genuine passion and how
Right.
much was a calculated performance
Right.
to maintain her notoriety.
Okay, let's unpack another key part of her legend. Her skill with the sword.
Okay.
It was just as famous as her singing.
Right.
Her father, being a master swordsman, made sure she had rigorous training alongside the male court pages.
Wow.
So she wasn't just dabbling.
Yeah.
She became a true expert, a fencing master in her own right.
A master.
What's so striking is how unusual this was for women.
Right?
Dueling and even just regular fencing were very much in the male domain,
Right.
yet she frequently competed with and famously defeated men in both duels and formal matches.
Wow.
Her reputation as a formidable duelist grew,
Hmm.
and while the claim of killing 10 men might be an exaggeration,
Okay.
it speaks to the fear and respect she commanded.
We have these amazing stories of her duels,
Right.
like the one with Comte d'Albert,
Comte d'Albert.
who initially thought she was a man.
Oh,
After she wounded him, she apparently felt bad
she felt bad.
and nursed him back to health,
Oh.
and they became lifelong friends.
Wow.
Then there's the royal ball incident.
Okay.
Dressed as a man, she kissed a woman,
Oh, my.
and 3 of the woman's suitors challenged her.
Oh.
She took them all on
Seriously.
and defeated them.
She defeated all 3 of them.
And even a duel with the singer Dumasny.
Dumesny.
for insulting the female opera members.
What?
She wasn't afraid to use her blade to defend her honor and the honor of others.
Wow.
Beyond the spectacle, what do these public displays of female prowess suggest about the perception of women's capabilities at the time?
That's a great question.
Did it spark any wider discussions,
Oh.
even if only in hushed tones?
It's hard to say definitively about widespread public discussion,
Yeah.
but within the aristocratic circles,
Okay.
it certainly would have been a topic of intense gossip. And probably a mixture of shock and perhaps a grudging admiration for her skill,
Yeah.
even if they publicly condemned her breaking of social norms.
Right, of course.
It's important to remember the context of dueling in 17th century France.
Okay.
While technically illegal by royal decree,
Okay.
duels were often tolerated as a way for noblemen to settle disputes of honor.
Right.
Refusing a duel could bring social shame.
Right.
So it was a complex social ritual.
Yeah.
For a woman to enter this male arena was a profound transgression
Yeah.
of these unwritten rules.
Mm-hmm.
Her repeated participation shows incredible courage and a total disregard for what society thought she should be doing.
Her personal life was just as boundary-breaking.
Absolutely.
She had numerous passionate affairs with both men and women.
Uh-huh.
Her male lovers included some very prominent figures.
Right, as I mentioned.
These relationships really highlight her sexual freedom
Mm-hmm.
and how she just didn't adhere to the norms of female chastity. And her relationships with women were equally significant.
Yes.
The pursuit of the young woman into the convent
Oh, God.
and the alleged fiery escape
Right.
is one of the most dramatic stories associated with her.
Definitely.
Then there was her 2-year affair with Madame la Marquise de Florensac,
Okay.
who was apparently considered one of the most beautiful women in France.
Wow.
That seems to have been a really important and happy period in her life.
Right.
Her public flirtations and even kissing women at social events were also incredibly bold for the time,
So bold.
given the strict social codes. Why do you think her father,
Right.
despite his unconventional nature, seemed to accept, or at least not overtly prevent, these relationships?
That's a really interesting question.
It is.
It's possible her father, having lived a somewhat unconventional life himself,
Right.
perhaps saw a kindred spirit in her defiance,
Mm.
or perhaps given his connections and influence,
Yeah.
he felt he could shield her from the worst consequences, allowing her a degree of freedom that other women simply didn't have.
Absolutely.
Her bisexuality and open affairs were undeniably scandalous. You have to wonder about the societal reactions.
Yeah.
While it often led to legal trouble and
correct.
social ostracization,
Right.
you do hear whispers that the openly gay lifestyle of King Louis IV's brother
Oh, wow.
might have created a slightly more tolerant atmosphere
Yeah.
within certain aristocratic circles,
Right.
though certainly not universally accepted.
Now let's delve into that convent incident
Okay.
because it's so central to her legend, even if the details are murky.
Murky.
The popular story is that she fell in love with a young woman who was sent to a convent,
To a convent.
La Maupin, not one to be easily deterred,
Right.
supposedly followed her posed as a postulant
As a postulant.
and then to facilitate their escape,
Okay.
stole the body of a deceased nun,
She stole a body.
put it in her lover's bed,
What?
and set the convent on fire.
Set the convent on fire.
Set the convent on fire.
Yep.
Talk about extreme measures.
Extreme.
If even partly true, it shows an incredible level of devotion
It does.
and a complete disregard for any rules or laws. They were reportedly on the run for 3 months after this.
Wow.
And the fact that she was tried in absentia as Sieur de Maupin,
As a man.
as a man for arson, kidnapping, and body snatching,
Oh my gosh.
and sentenced to death by fire,
Yeah.
is just mind-boggling.
Wow.
It's almost as if the legal system couldn't even process a woman committing such acts,
Right.
forcing them to assign her a male identity to fit the criminal role.
The affair with the lover eventually ended, and La Maupin, facing that death sentence, had to flee.
Had to flee.
It's believed she received a royal pardon, likely through the influence of her powerful connections, like Count d'Armagnac.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how the details of this incident
Right.
vary across different accounts.
Right.
There's a real lack of solid primary evidence.
Yeah.
It seems like this story,
Yeah.
whether entirely factual or heavily embellished,
Became a key part of the La Maupin mythos very early on. It makes you wonder if some of these more outlandish tales were amplified over time,
Right.
perhaps even by Maupin herself,
Right.
to further solidify her rebellious image.
It really speaks to how her life was just a constant source of fascination and scandal
Oh, yeah.
for people at the time.
Absolutely.
Her tumultuous career
Mm-hmm.
and flamboyant lifestyle fueled so much gossip and rumor.
I bet.
She was a true proto-celebrity.
Right.
People all over France and even in Britain were following her exploits.
Huh.
The public seemed to have this insatiable appetite for news about her.
Uh-huh.
She was definitely seen as this wild child, constantly pushing the boundaries. Her behavior went against pretty much every strict moral standard of the time, so she undoubtedly shocked a lot of people.
A lot.
But at the same time, her exceptional talent in male-dominated areas like swordsmanship and her incredible voice as an opera singer must have inspired awe.
And maybe even a bit of reluctant admiration.
It's interesting that her wearing men's clothing, while certainly unconventional, might not have been as huge a scandal for everyone, especially within the French court, where cross-dressing wasn't unheard of, particularly with the king's brother.
And the fact that we don't have a ton of definitive primary sources really does suggest that this legendary aura started to build around her. Even while she was alive, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. And that legendary aura continues to this day.
Absolutely.
Maupin is far from being a forgotten figure. She's become a really significant cultural icon, especially within LGBTQ+ communities, where she's celebrated as a queer figure. Her nonconformity and the way she just embraced her desires really resonate with modern audiences.
They really do.
Théophile Gautier's 1835 novel, Mademoiselle de Maupin, even though it's fictionalized, played a huge role in shaping her modern image. He portrayed her as this symbol of beauty, a romantic ideal, even decadent. The novel's exploration of gender and sexuality was pretty radical for its time.
It was.
And even got it banned in some places.
Oh, wow.
Her story has gone on to inspire so many different forms of media.
So many.
Books, films, plays, musicals, even a song by Bastille.
Wow.
You have that Italian film, the French TV series, the musical, the play. She just keeps popping up in popular culture.
She does.
And her presence on websites like Rejected Princesses and Badass of the Week really highlights how she's seen as this strong, unconventional figure. Based on what, why do you think her story continues to have such staying power?
I think it's precisely because she defied so many expectations and lived life on her own terms in a time when that was almost unthinkable for a woman. Her audacity, her talent, and her passionate nature, even with all the scandals, make her a compelling figure.
She does.
She embodies a kind of freedom that many people even today can only dream of.
Beyond all the major scandals, there are these smaller, lesser-known details that add even more color to her life. Her name had variations, for one. And apparently her father, despite her independence, threatened to kill any man who tried to court her.
Oh, my gosh.
There's the story about her briefly working as a maid. And styling her employer's hair with radishes out of spite.
What?
And her dramatic flair wasn't just on stage. She supposedly stabbed herself with a real knife.
Really?
During a suicide scene in a performance.
Seriously?
Some even say she had a near photographic memory.
Oh, wow.
Which helped her learn those complex opera roles.
Yeah.
And for someone who lived such a dramatic and public life, her end seems surprisingly quiet.
Quiet?
She retired after the death of Madame de Florensac. Entered a convent. And died relatively young, possibly of grief.
Oh, wow.
And then there's that rather grim detail.
From
a biographer about her body being unceremoniously dumped. It's a stark contrast to the vibrant life she led.
It truly is.
It's almost as if society didn't quite know what to do with her in life. And that continued even in death.
Julie d'Aubigny,
Maupin. A life that often feels more like an unbelievable story than actual history. From the opera stage where she commanded attention, to the dueling ground where she defied expectations, from her passionate affairs with both men and women, to the legendary possibly fiery convent escape. She was a true original.
A true original.
Her story continues to captivate us, not just because of the outrageousness of it all, but because of the sheer audacity with which she lived life entirely on her own terms.
On her own terms.
A true badass.
A true badass.
Who left a mark that's impossible to ignore.
For those of you who want to dig even deeper into Le Maupin's extraordinary world, we highly recommend exploring the digitized archives at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France and the Archives Nationales. Look for scholarly articles and biographies. And definitely check out those online discussions. And dedicated websites like kellygardner.com, rejectedprincesses.com, and badassofftheweek.com.
Cool.
And, of course, dive into the fictionalized accounts for a different perspective on this remarkable life.
And consider this. In a world that demanded absolute conformity, what was it that drove Le Maupin to such spectacular rebellion? And what can we, living centuries later, learn from her unyielding spirit?
Her unyielding spirit.
That's a thought to take with you.
Take it with you.
Until our next bizarre journey here on Lifespan.